Hi and welcome back. This is class 13, in which we are going to learn how to improve the quality of the render of our dust simulation. Just one word before we get started. Here on the controller node, I added a few things here. I did a few parameters and changed the expression a bit so we can get the information and extract the information from the file. No version here because I don't have a sim-01, 02, 03, but if you save this as sim-01, you will have something. And so the other thing I change here is the split with the dot, all this part. Instead of being at the end, I put it in between. So I can do that on any type of file, any naming with this dash mode. Okay. And then, so I'm going to show you the render on a static frame. Okay, we are going to render frame 100, and so I will package this file along with the class 13 start. Okay, so you will have this BGOSC file. It's just the density cached, no velocity in there. Okay, so you can start render along with me if you don't want to do the simulation yourself. Okay, so use this class 13 start file to render a first frame. Okay, we are going to use that as a reference. This has been done with the setup that I built so far with the previous class on rendering. Before we go and start lighting and tweaking our lights, usually when you get to this point, you should have the lighting setup from the lighter on the shot, okay? You should select the lights that you really need on the volume. I really recommend that you go get the main lights and only the main lights that are really important for the dust. Because otherwise, if you put too much lights in there, it's going to take really long to render. Okay, so limit yourself to the minimum amount of lights. Now, if you have a lot of lights that you cannot avoid, for instance, traffic lights or lamppost or car lights, maybe you should consider taking all those lights, all those secondary lights. I mean by secondary lights, the one that gives some lighting information, lighting improvement, but are not really the key light or the rim and fill that gives the main shadow on the dust. So take all those lights and maybe you can consider rendering an environment map with those lights with the camera, a 360-degree camera as with the POV of the volume, okay? And then you can use this map on an environment light to add some lighting, but it would cost less than having like maybe tens of lights inside your file. So if you remember the previous class about rendering, you know we have some extra AOVs here that we can use. And so I'm going to start working on the first light, the key light, okay? And see how we can improve this a little bit. Now, on the key light, I already set up some good lighting here with the intensity exposure. I'm quite happy with that. I gave a color here to give this feeling of a sunset light, so it's a bit pinky, ready. Choose the one you like. And then go on the shadow here. What I would like to do, basically with those three lights here, is to mimic the kind of a blue environment light that we have here, because I don't want to use an environment light, okay? So instead of having an environment light, I would like to use some color, bring back some color inside the render, inside the shadows, to mimic the fact that we have some environment light bringing back here, bouncing some light on the other side of the smoke. So here, if you go to the light, maybe we want to maybe test that before. So I'm going to put some really bright blue and I'm going to render that. So yes, it works, good. And so here I'm going to maybe go for this kind of a blue light and render. And so if we compare with the previous render, okay, the one that I made with the initial start file, here you can see that we bring back some blue color. Maybe with the video compression you don't really see it, but try this on your machine and you will see that we have some blue inside the shadow. And so now, okay, let's say I'm good with this light. Maybe I'll come back to it later. But I would like to work with the rim light. Okay, so I go into the rim AOV so I can see my contribution with this light. And I go with this rim. And so maybe it's a little bit too bright. So I'm going to reduce a little the exposure here. Okay, so I'm going to snap this and launch a new render. And so, yeah, that's a bit more like I would like it. And now if we go to the shadow, I'm going to, in the same way, tint a little bit this shadow color. So here, copy the parameter, and here I'm going to paste the values. All right, and let's snap my render, kill, and render again. So here, might be really, really subtle, but we have some blue back in there as well. And now I would like to increase the shadow intensity. And let's play with 2 as a start. And so the shadow intensity is going to play with the dark parts of the smoke. The shadow is going to be increased as compared to the brighter areas, okay, without having to change anything on the light, without having to change anything on the density, okay. And with this, I'm hoping to bring back some interesting shapes that we have, but are completely flat because of the render. So I'm going to increase this even more, okay, to 10, and I'm going to snap this one. And so now with this value inside the shadow intensity, I get some more information there about the shape of the volume. And what I'm hoping for that these highlights here are going to contribute to the main color with some interesting shapes, and then the darker part here are going to help. And then if I compare both of them, okay, so this is helping, but it's not there yet. I suspect it's because of the field direct. So I'm going to work on this one before coming back to the rim light. So the fill here, so there's no shadow. So for now, I'm going to just reduce the exposure, okay? And let's compare that. That's not really helping, I think. Yeah, so this is helping a little bit, but not really. So I'm going to add the shadows now for the fill light. So I go here, ray trace shadow. It's using the dust also as a shadow mask. And I'm going to paste the same color. So copy parameter, paste values. And here I'm going to increase the shadow intensity to 10 as well, directly the same as the rim. And so if I go back to my fill, kill, render. So definitely darker. Now we still have these little highlights here, which I'm hoping should help on this render, but it's not really helping at the moment. If we compare it with before, we have some interesting, more interesting shape, but still I don't think it's really good. So I'm going to improve that a bit more and come back with some good values. And so, well, maybe I exaggerated it a little bit, okay? But I wanted to show you how far we can go bringing back some patterns, some interesting shapes that we have inside the smoke. I didn't change anything in the simulation, okay? I didn't increase the resolution, I swear. It's just that with my lighting now, I could go from something which was really flat with just a basic lighting to something which is bringing some interesting patterns and shape in there. okay? And this just by improving the shadows on my rim light and on my fill light, okay? And so with some more tweaking, I could get this result, okay? So this is what we had before. This is the current one, okay? I reduced the highlights and as compared to the previous one, the first one, which was a little bit flat, this is what we have now, okay? With the same density, if we look at the alpha, this is really the same as before, okay? But we got back some more information that then we can use in comp because we have separated each AOV on a different, each light on a different AOV. So then the compositor can actually work on it correctly. And so now we have played with the lights. We can go inside the ROP network here and select the mantra ROP. We are going to add some volume limit, just one for now. Okay, and this is going to add some bouncing inside the volume. Okay, so here I'm not going to change anything, but here on the AOV, extra image plane, I'm going to add the indirect lighting. Okay, and so I saved this file already. I'm going to kill and I'm going to re-render. And as you can see, this is bringing some light inside the volume. The light is now scattering inside the volume. And if we look at the indirect volume, we see that we have some a little bit of noise inside this indirect volume. Okay, and so we are going to work on that. Go to the rendering tab. Okay, and here now you can check on the ray variance anti-aliasing. All right. Now, this is responsible for the secondary rays that are casted inside the volume. Sorry, after the primary ray, they are casted outside. They are looking for indirect lighting mainly. And so here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the ray samples to 16, okay? And the noise level, so the noise level, how does this work? It's basically taking the information from the image here and looking at the noise. Okay, it's detecting the noise. If the noise level is below this this value, okay, then it's fine. It's not going to cast any more ray. But if it's above this value, then it's going to say, okay, send more rays. And there you go. So much less noise inside this AOV, inside this indirect volume, okay? If we compare to before, this is what we gain, okay? Let's zoom in a bit. Now this is what you have. So that's good, but just compare this to the render time, okay? We have like 25 seconds here, and here we have 1 minute 37, okay? So we multiply by almost 4. All right, so be careful with that. You could maybe accept a little bit more noise than this, or if you cannot really go with that amount of time, maybe get rid of the volume limit altogether. You don't want any bouncing inside the render. So I'm going to reduce it myself here, and maybe I'm going to accept some more noise. And so this is a result we had, okay, with it was 16 max ray samples and 0.001 with 1 minute 37. Here it is a value of 12 max ray samples and a noise level of 0.005, okay, and you see that we dropped to 1.14. Let me zoom a bit so we can see the difference between the two. Okay, we have a bit more noise, but it's not really noticeable. And then here is the last version with 9 and 0.005, and you see that we dropped to 55 seconds instead of here 1.37. And I mean, you can see the difference, obviously, but hopefully when you mix it back with everything, you don't really notice that there is a difference between the two, okay? All right. Yes, there are some noise here, but this is a really transparent area. And for the transparency, I don't know if you remember, we are playing with the stochastic samples here to reduce this, which I'm going to do now. And so here, less noise, okay, as compared to before. Obviously, we still have a little bit, but maybe I will improve that later. just look at the render time, 1 minute 56. So it's 1 minute more than before, okay? But for much less noise at the same time. So it's about balancing now, and you will have to tweak it your own way for what you need. Here, I don't know if you see here, this is what we had before and now what we have, okay, with the noise. I can get rid of this one in between, before, after, okay, so we are actually removing the noise in there. And this is what we had at the beginning. Sorry, no, at the beginning we had this flat. Here we have this shading on the volume. Now, I also did some tests on the environment light here. So I used this start file again. Okay, this is the render we used to have with key, rim, and fill, the first setup I made. And then I went to the ROP here and I removed the fill and the rim and I added the environment light. And so I got this render immediately, okay? You can notice that we have almost the same render time here, 13 to 15, okay? And an acceptable amount of noise. If we look at the environment, we have some noise, obviously, and so we need to improve the shading here. But it's still acceptable and comparable to the previous one, even though it adds some noise. But keep in mind that this environment light, which is the default one in Houdini, is quite regular. If you go here and display it, you see that it's like a real blue, a constant, almost constant blue everywhere on the sphere. So the noise is quite reasonable here. Then I did another test here with some more shadows on the environment. So it was the light exposure for this one was 0 and the shadow was 1. And then this last test, it is 1 and the shadow are 10. Okay, so I'm going to try and reduce this noise on the environment and we see if the render time doesn't explode too much. So this is what we used to have. And here with just increasing the shading quality on the light here, okay, and not touching the render settings, this is what I could reduce. Okay, I could reduce this noise to this value. And then going back to the ROP here, I changed the noise level from 0.1 to 0.05. And here, well, actually, that's it. I think I changed this only. And this is what we have now. Okay, so we have even less noise. Now let's look here. We can see that it's actually improving also the image here. Well, that's it for the environment. So it's taking really a bit more time, obviously, to reduce the noise on the environment. Again, keep in mind this environment is quite uniform. So if you have a really varying environment light, then you might have some more noise. Also, I did not use the volume limit here, so this can drastically increase the render time as well. All right. And well, then what you can imagine as well, because when you look at this render here, I realize we are losing a lot of the information that we got with the key rim and fill technique. So maybe then you can just do a mix of both technique, and you can use the rim maybe with the environment light to fill, to use the environment as a fill with some low settings, and maybe you would not see too much noise. Well, it's up to you. You know how this works now, so you can balance your lighting as you want. And I did the test with the environment with the fill. So this is the render with the key, rim, and fill, okay? And this one is the render with key, rim, and the environment as a fill light. All right, and then I changed a little bit my fill light to match more, to be closer to the environment light, and this is what I could get, okay? Definitely we have, here it's a little bit more flat with the fill light, whereas with the environment light you have some more shadow in there, which are a bit more interesting than here, okay? But it comes as a price, okay? 50 seconds for the environment light, 17 seconds with the fill light. All right, well, that's it I'm going to save this file as class 14 start. Okay, so you will have those lights. You just have here to come and choose between either the field or the environment, or a mix of what you want. And so that's it for class 13. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next class.